A winding road runs from the sea up a steep hill to the village of Altavilla Milicia. And halfway up that road stands the Trattoria del Mare, Altavilla's only restaurant.
Figlia in candela, genero d'amore.
Tutti in candela.
It is owned by Salvatore Incandela. It is staffed by members of his family. And the number of incandelas in the kitchen here is perhaps exceeded only by the number of fish, fresh from the nearby village of Porticello. Fish which various incandelas brush with fresh olive oil, roast in a wood-fired oven, and drench in the juice of lemons picked just outside the town. This, however, is not the only restaurant run by the Incandela family. Enzo Incandela of Altavilla sings, not however in Altavilla, but in Chicago at the Sicily restaurant in North Harlem, owned by Salvatore Incandela's brother, John. The steaming mussels served up in the kitchen come, to be sure, from Boston, but they taste as though they came from the Mediterranean. And the example of the Incandela brothers is not unique, for virtually everybody in this village has ties with our city just as obvious. The immigration began in the early years of the 20th century, and over the years, about 10,000 Miliciotti, as they call themselves, left this town. And almost to the last man, woman, and child, they went to Chicago. A schoolhouse at Oak and Cambridge is the last remnant of the old parish of St. Philip Benizi they built early in this century. And though Cabrini Green now stands where the Chicagoans from Alta Villa once lived, the Chicagoans from Alta Villa haven't forgotten the old country. Like Joe Camarda, a butcher on West Addison. He came to Chicago from Alta Villa 26 years ago, but his native village is never far from his mind. Nor is Giuseppe Camarda, his uncle and namesake, who still works in his field just outside the town. Like one of the partners in the Italian Modern Bakery on West Montrose. But Gaspare Lombardo wasn't here when we stopped by. He was back in Alta Villa, pressing grapes from his vineyard. For the past 10 years, he's returned to Alta Villa every fall for the harvest. He hopes to be back in Chicago by Christmas. Like Michele Incandela, a cousin of the restaurant owners. He bakes the best bread in Alta Villa, in spite of his modest-appearing shop. He used to work for the Gonella Baking Company in Chicago, but returned to Alta Villa because the weather in Chicago gave him problems with his nose. Concetta Lima Romano was a somewhat different case. We met her and her son Salvatore near Alta Villa's parish church. She lives in a single room overlooking the sea. And the 82-year-old widow told us she had a younger sister who left Alta Villa for Chicago some 58 years ago. And would we please call her when we got home? We found that sister, Mrs. Dominic Damiano, widowed 2 years ago. And we showed her some tape of her sister, whom she has seen only once since coming to this country. Letters are the only communication this family has and will have. Because of age and ill health, the sisters will not likely see each other again. But for the young, it's a different situation. Jumbo jets and bargain fares have narrowed the gap between the new world and the old, and now it's hard to tell where Chicago ends and Altavilla Milicia begins.
È bello pesce, Fede!
Isso vede sempre lo pesce in mano te. Se c'è chiama la fantasia, la pisciolea, la figlia mia, che mi pare, uè mamma, mi voglio amare da. Uè mamma, pesce, pesce e baccalà. Uè mamma, mi voglio amare da. Zumano, baccalà.
Professore!
The scene is the sacristy of the Church of Maria Santissima Lauretana, and Chicago attorney Anthony Scariano and his brother John are greeting the parish priest and a village school teacher. All this not long ago in a town almost 4,000 miles from Chicago. It's the town of Altavilla Milicia on the island of Sicily, a village of perhaps 4,000, about 20 miles down the coast from Palermo. It is a village the Scariano's ancestors left almost 80 years ago, but a village where the Scariano's roots go back before history was recorded. Life in Altavilla Milicia has remained virtually the same for centuries. People make their living from the land, from olives, lemons, and grapes. And it was in a field just outside the village that the Scarianos found a family named Imburgia, the name of the family of their mother. Maria Imburgia was born in Altavilla before the turn of the century. As a child, she was brought to Chicago by her parents, taken back to Altavilla a short time later, then brought back to Chicago to remain. Here she married Antonio Scariano, an immigrant from Agrigento. And in Chicago, they lived near Oak and Cambridge. And they had two sons, John the elder and Tony the baby. John, who is now 63, and Tony, who not long ago headed the Illinois Racing Board after serving 16 years in the Illinois state legislature.
All right, ora facciamo una fotografia.
A family with cousins still in the old country who work the soil. There is something irresistible about Altavilla, something attractive about a way of life where merchants know their goods must be fresh or discerning customers won't buy. But that's just part of what brought Tony Scariano back to Altavilla for the fourth time, just part of what made him bring his brother back to the old country for the first time. As an American soldier in the last days of World War II, Tony Scariano first visited the village of his mother, and he brought his mother back to Altavilla for one last time in 1973. She died 2 years later. On all these visits, he's met an ever-widening circle of relatives. Here, a Giovenco, a member of the family of his maternal grandmother. And here, the aging goat herd, Don Vincenzo Romano, who has spent most of his life in the hills.
Tommaso, figlia
Di Antonio.
di Antonio. Antonio, figlia di Giuseppe Imburgia.
Ecco.
Tommaso was the son of Antonio. Antonio was the son of Giuseppe. An elderly cousin helps trace the family tree. But monuments of stone also trace the history of this family. For what appears to be another small village lies half a mile from Altavilla. It is the cemetery, and in accord with the custom of Sicily, it is almost a perfect replica in miniature of the town itself, except it is more sumptuous.
It's amazing. Look out.
Here are not only names that have been part of the Scarianos' heritage since the early 17th century, but others, like Lombardo, Lobosco, Locascio, La Barbera. Names common here in the village of Altavilla Milicia, but over the past 80 years, more common still in the city of Chicago. A group of young men from Altavilla Milicia play soccer on a gravel field in the midst of olive groves 4 miles from town. They are all unemployed. They have virtually no hope of finding work here. It's not surprising that since 1900, as many as 10,000 from this town have come to Chicago looking for a better life. What's remarkable is that many have come back and continue to do so. Like Mario Vizo. He was born in Altavilla, but has spent all but 10 of his 37 years in Chicago. He came back because it's easier to be unemployed here than in Chicago. Like Sam Fracano, who was brought from Altavilla to Chicago when he was 11. He went to Prosser Vocational High on the northwest side, graduated in 1975, but is now back in Altavilla, an entirely different kind of life.
The only entertainment is this, what you see, the Belvedere. When you have nothing to do, you come and pace around here and you talk to friends.
It's kind of hard to get used to that after Chicago.
Yes, it is. You get used to a moving, hard rhythm life. Then, and when you come back here, you have this slow type of life, and it's a big change.
The hard realities of life here in Altavilla Milicia are evident even to the youngest child. Sara Imburgia is only 8, but already she spends half a day picking olives here with her parents, partly because they need her help, partly because the school is so crowded she can attend classes only in the afternoon. For young children here, life is perhaps most normal by our standards, but that changes as soon as they reach adolescence. The sexes are sharply segregated. A young man cannot approach a young woman in the street. He must quite literally pace under her balcony at night, and hope at best for a clandestine conversation. Marriages are arranged by the parents, and though people here dress in accord with the latest fashion, the lifestyle has hardly changed in 4 centuries. The mass media, which have transformed life in so many other remote corners of the world, have had little effect here.
Nel nome del Padre, del Figlio e dello Spirito Santo, pace e bene.
The women still find refuge in the church, the daily masses, the almost incessant mourning for relatives who may have passed away years ago. The young complain and often leave, and then, for reasons even they can't explain, come back.
Something about the place here, it's attractive. When you're here, the guys at the above there, you keep pacing up and down, and all you hear them saying is, I wish there was something to do. I wish I could get out of here. But then when they finally do get out of here, after they stay a day away, they have that feeling, they want to come back. There's something about this place that's attractive. It puts roots in you, and it pulls you back. It keeps pulling you back.
The church is part of what brings people back to Alta Villa, and part of what keeps the village so close to the Chicago immigrants. But the attractive force is not in the sacraments, and only partially in the teachings of the church.
Con occhi benigni guardate Alta Villa.
In the Church of Maria Santissima Lauretana, Father Salvatore Romano sings a hymn to the Virgin, a hymn unique to the village of Altavilla Milicia. On most occasions, those who receive the sacraments here are the elderly women of the town. But this does not begin to show the full measure of the faith of the people of Altavilla Milicia. For an image of the Blessed Mother stands above the altar of the church, and that's what binds the Altavillesi together also with their brethren in Chicago. Legend has it that the image was rescued 400 years ago from infidel pirates trying to round this cape. The earliest written documents date this sanctuary from the early 17th century. And on September 8th each year, the image is carried through the streets of the village. And on that day, the town of Alta Villa truly becomes a city, jammed with pilgrims who come from all over Italy and from abroad as well. That same feast is observed in Chicago each year in precisely the same manner as in the old country, by the thousands of Altavillesi who have come here. The Altavillesi of Chicago have stuck together. Their lodge, the Maria Santissima Lauretana Society, takes its name from the parish church of their native city. It was formed early in this century, almost as soon as the first immigrants from Alta Villa arrived. And from their earliest days here, the Altavillesi of Chicago celebrated the feast of the Blessed Mother. The feast has survived the changing of their old near North Side neighborhood. It has survived the destruction of their old parish church. And it has helped remind them just who they are.
I feel like I never lost what I am. You know, I always remember what I am, and being part of this society, and being carry on the tradition and the devotion. It makes me feel like I'm an American citizen, a Chicagoan, and Altavillese all the time.
Well, I have to tell you the truth. I feel like being American, Chicagoan, but I can never forget my town, where I was born. I still love it. I got a relation in there yet. I got a lot of friends in those times. I've been to go up and back, and you can't forget a town like that.
Nobody can forget this town who has once seen it, though you perhaps have to be a native to understand its attraction. That attraction is very close to all of us, because there are so many Altavillesi in our midst.